were intent on getting him the football.
100%.
He had 12 targets, and
including some in the end zone, like
correct.
they tried.
Not only that, but in the NFL, you're not credited with a target if a penalty is called on the play. So Odell had 2 separate throws to him in the end zone where he was basically tackled.
Yes.
So neither of those is credited as an end zone target or a target, period. They tried everything they could to do 2 things. 1, get Odell Beckham Jr. the football in the end zone. 2, find a way to not score from the 2-yard line. But
31% target share in Week 10. You compare that with a 22% target share weeks 5 through 9. So a clear increase in attempts to get him the ball. Now 7 straight games without a touchdown. That
part's unnerving. It's unnerving. I would just say this: if you,
I forget. Our friend DJ Gallo mentioned this on Twitter, and I retweeted it. That Minkah Fitzpatrick, the defensive back, has more touchdowns this year than Odell Beckham Jr.
Sounds about right.
Christian Kirk scored 3 times as many touchdowns in 1 week as Odell Beckham Jr. has scored this year.
But so what I would say for Odell is that obviously, listen, you wanted the touchdown, of course.
Sure.
We can decide whether the Steelers are a massive disadvantage for opposing wide receivers, but Mike Clay has continually harped on weeks 11 through 17 as being more generous for Odell than the first 10 weeks of his schedule.
Right.
The schedule lightens up. If you have been riding the wave of Odell, then your hope is that, like, hey, maybe they turned a corner. Maybe they had a long, hard look in the mirror and they realized that even if it comes at the cost of efficiency elsewhere, let's just use our best playmakers. The ball needs to be in the hands of Odell, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, and Jarvis Landry. Yeah. And if Rashard Higgins has a game-winning touchdown because there's so much tension going somewhere else, great.
Whatever. Yeah.
But for the most part, it's going to be those 4 guys, as it should be.
I just want you to know that, like, I primed the pump for the OBJ release. Like, I knew it wasn't coming this week, but I knew it was definitely like a, you know.
So you're calling it this week, maybe?
I'm calling it this week.
Okay, good. Do you want to do it right now or you want to wait till Thursday?
I'm going to wait till Thursday.
Okay, Thursday. They play on Thursday night. Let's do it on Thursday. So let's get to the next segment, which is...
And they play Pittsburgh on Thursday night. It's a short week. And then you mentioned the schedule very quickly. So after the Steelers on Thursday, they've got 10 days to prepare for a home game against the Dolphins. Then they're at the Steelers again. Then they're home to Cincinnati. So certainly next 4 look good.
They have 2 matches with the Bengals, actually. Is that right? Yeah, 2 more matches with the Bengals. They have the Dolphins. And depending on what you think on the Steelers secondary, because yesterday they were really good, and previous weeks they were not so great.
Squealers.
That's right. Sorry, Allison.
They are
Squealers.
They are the Squealers. Not cool,
She
Keith.
You not paying attention anymore.
Not cool, Keith. You neither am I.
Yeah.
Hey, not cool, Keith. You agree with our assessment of the Browns? Your thoughts on that game?
No, I think the way you broke it down was exactly how I saw it. They definitely seemed to put a lot more attention into making sure that OBJ was getting touches, and obviously it didn't play out statistically, but yes, I was really happy with the way they approached it. Obviously, down at the goal line, they just need to have better play calling. I don't know why why bring all 11 guys in tight? Spread them out, make it 8-on-8 football. And give yourself a chance.
Keith, it was analysis paralysis, right? They overthought it too much. That happens frequently in coaching. I'm not surprised that it happened yesterday. It will continue to happen going forward. Let's play some something or nothing, Matthew.
Yes, sir.
Some players that surprisingly had monster days yesterday. And do we think it amounts to something, or do we think that maybe not so much? Let's begin with Darius Slayton, who had 10 catches for 121 yards and 2 touchdowns, twice as many as Odell Beckham has all season. He has multiple touchdowns receptions for the second time in his past 3 games. He is a big play waiting to happen. He's plenty of speed. Sterling Shepard is currently out with a concussion. Something or nothing here for the speedy 5th-round pick out of Auburn, factoring in that the Giants do go on a bye this upcoming week.
They do. So, can I choose both?
Sure.
So here's what I will say. It is both something and it is nothing.
Right.
It is something in this sense. Kid's a talented player. Like, forget anything else. Just like you watch the kid, like, he can play. They found something. The Giants found something in Darius Slayton. So, like, just an impressive young man on the football field, making contested catches, making sidelines with, the toe taps. Like, he's an impressive young man just on the football field. So I would say it is something from that sense. And also you mentioned Sterling Shepard out. So, look, Sterling Shepard, we hope for the best. It does not feel like he's coming back anytime soon. If you read the tea leaves, that we don't know.
There are people in New York who cover the team diligently who are saying like some of his teammates wonder if he should ever play football again.
Right.
Which is scary,
awful.
and you certainly want the best for Sterling and his health first. Scary thought. Scary thought.
Very scary thought. But given the way the season has gone for the Giants, the expectation is that it's going to be later rather than sooner that we see Sterling Shepard back on a football field. So there's opportunity there for Darius Slayton, who certainly made a name for himself and certainly seems to have a connection with Daniel Jones. It is nothing, I believe, because of, you mentioned their schedule. So they're on a bye this week.
Yep.
Then they're at Chicago, home to Green Bay, at Philadelphia. So you don't like the next 2 weeks. Green Bay and Philadelphia don't scare you as much. But remember, Evan Ingram didn't play in this game either. And Saquon Barkley did nothing in this game, and you have to expect that if you're thinking about this team in terms of pass catchers on this team, that in a general week with full health, that at best Darius Slayton is fourth after Barkley, Ingram, Golden Tate. And so, look, he had the 2-touchdown game a couple weeks ago, but then, week 8 he had week 8 he had the 2 touchdowns against the Giants, but did nothing like in between in week 9.
Right. So it's very up and down. So here's what I'll say, and I'm going to tie this into Daniel Jones because my logic applies to both of these players. Yep. Daniel Jones yesterday had 308 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, added 20 rushing yards, 30.3 fantasy points.
He was great.
Third time that Daniel Jones has been a good spot this year for fantasy.
Wait a minute, I think he had 4 touchdown passes.
Oh, he may have had 4.
He had 4. He had 2 to Golden Tate and 2 to Darius
Slayton. I'm sorry. 4 passing touchdowns yesterday for Daniel Jones. I'm going to use the same logic because I think it applies here. The upcoming schedule that you alluded to, the bye, and then Chicago, then Green Bay, and then Philly. But look at the playoff schedule for the Giants.
Yeah.
The Giants' playoff schedule. At Philly, home to Miami. At Washington, home to Philly.
Unbelievable.
So we are now 2 weeks away from byes being a thing of the past, Matthew. Some lineups, some teams may have already basically had every player of consequence go through his respective bye. Right? I mean, there's certainly some teams that are going to, you're going to have to with Patrick Mahomes coming up on a bye and things like that. But if you're somebody that has seen the bulk of your roster go through a bye, especially your star players go through a bye, I don't hate the idea of adding either Darius Slayton or Daniel Jones, especially if you have a sticky quarterback situation right now.
Sure.
Because when you get to that playoff schedule, if this continues, especially Daniel Jones, I should say, because Jones has been good 3 separate times against bad teams, then you might have players that you could insert into your lineups in the playoffs. And I know you're saying, you're really going to start Daniel Jones in the playoffs. Well, look at some of the quarterbacks that have been less than we expected.
Yeah,
Drew Brees laid an egg against the Falcons yesterday.
Craziness.
So weird stuff happens in fantasy football. Maybe you're concerned. I'm not saying you're going to bench Patrick Mahomes, but the Chiefs have a very difficult schedule in the playoffs. The Saints have a very difficult schedule in the playoffs.
And there are certain
guys who have been inconsistent.
You don't feel great about Baker Mayfield.
What if Russell Wilson struggles tonight against the 49ers? Again, they have a chance to play them again. You could be like, whoa. What are you going to do there?
Carson Wentz hasn't been what you drafted him to be.
So it's not totally inconceivable that your quarterback could be less than what you've expected so far.
Right.
So Ryan Tannehill, speaking of quarterbacks,
Tom Brady, for all his greatness, if you look at what his numbers are in the fantasy playoffs, they tend to go more run heavy as it gets close. He has never been, at least in recent memory, he's never been a huge fantasy star during the fantasy playoffs, as great as Tom Brady is. And so you could certainly see a scenario in which Daniel Jones will have value during the fantasy playoffs, in addition to Darius Slayton. 2 more
quarterbacks here, Matthew, because again, sort of same idea. Ryan Tannehill and Kyle Allen. Tannehill goes for 18.9 fantasy points. They're now 3-1 in games he started. Now he's heads onto a bye. Obviously, a massive win yesterday over Kansas City.
Huge.
Kyle Allen throws for 300-plus yards, just 13.5 fantasy points, but he's a starter for a long time as Cam Newton's been placed on injured reserve. Kyle Allen plays the Falcons next week.
Yeah.
Something or nothing for either one of these players, because has Tannehill been good enough that you could roster him for a week before he even plays and then throw him into your lineup? And same deal for Kyle Allen. Should Kyle Allen be a streaming option for you in Week 11 with, again, 4 more quarterbacks on a bye? I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but not as many of the top quarterbacks. But still, you've got guys like Kyler Murray on a bye this week. I'm sorry, not this week. Maybe next week. But anyways, Aaron Rodgers on a bye, amongst other players. There's some good players on a bye this week.
Yes. And so I'm going to say something for both these guys. Ryan Tannehill's been a revelation, and it continues to just make Marcus Mariota and his struggles look worse and worse and worse. But Tannehill's looked good. Since in the last 4 games, he's the 10th best quarterback in fantasy on a per game basis.
Yeah.
He's a top 10 fantasy.
Yeah.
He's a top 10 fantasy quarterback over the last 4 weeks on a point per game basis, averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. And you know, you've mentioned this before. We've talked about this. People forget that Ryan Tannehill started his career at Texas A&M as a wide receiver. He's much more mobile than I think he sort of gets credit for. 7 for 75 and a touchdown over the last 2 weeks just with his legs. And so, yeah, that's a hell of a win for Tennessee. That's a hell of a win for them against the Kansas City Chiefs. And Tannehill with no Corey Davis in this game, no Delaney Walker in this game.
Pretty impressive, huh?
You know, especially when you think about how run heavy they want to be. Like, yes, I think Tannehill is a viable streamer this week and going forward. And
not this week. Tannehill's on a bye.
He's on a bye, but I'm just saying, like, and same with Kyle Allen. Like, again.
But I like Kyle Allen this week against Atlanta. I know Tannehill was way better, obviously, yesterday, but believe it or not going to buy into the Falcons being like, you know, this reformed defense after just one game.
Yeah, I'm not either. You know, so Kyle Allen, like, I mean, Kyle Allen, look, they lost that game to the Packers, but I was impressed as hell out with Kyle Allen, like getting no protection whatsoever on the road at Lambeau, snowing, bad conditions, like, you know, and I thought some interesting play calling. You know, maybe I'm looking at this too much from a fantasy perspective, but I'm just like, why are you not dumping off it more? Why are you not dumping it off to the most explosive player in the NFL right now? Like, you know, like, I don't know. It felt like they could have involved McCaffrey more, especially on that last drive, but whatever. Kyle Allen is, you know, listen, you wish he was a little bit more accurate at times, but given the conditions yesterday, like, he's a gutty kid.
He's made 8 starts in his career. Like, I'm actually encouraged, and I'm with you here. I'm encouraged by the overall trajectory.
I've made good calls and bad calls. I believe one of my best calls of the year was when Cam Newton was out. The very first thing I said, guys, Kyle Allen can play. You guys, like, and I was just like, he's going to be a lot better than you think he is. And I had him as a love that first week against Arizona. Like, Kyle Allen can play. Like, I think the Carolina Panthers have a decision to make this offseason.
They sure do. We'll get into that much more as we get closer to the end of the season.
But I like Kyle Allen as a streamer. I agree with you. I think both things are something. Tannehill and Kyle Allen, depending on what your needs are this week or for the future, I think both are viable pickups.
You know that fantasy football feeling when the excitement of a new week builds? You flex your analytical skills by